Today we're going to look at Practice Test 8, the Math No Calculator section, only heart of algebra questions, and there are 8 of them. Number 1. 3x plus x plus x plus x minus 3 minus 2 is equal to 7 plus x. In the equation above, what is the value of x? So this problem requires combining the like terms on the left and combining the like terms on the right, and then doing some algebra. We see here that there is a 3x plus 1x plus 1x plus 1x. So 3 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 should give us 6x. When I start with a negative 3 and I subtract 2 from that, I end up with a negative 5 or minus 5. On the right, 7 is the only number, so I don't change it, and I get 7. However, there is 2 different x's, so 1x plus 1x is 2x. From here, let's say I choose to move all the x's to the left and the numbers to the right. This would keep everything positive. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Cancels out on the right. I end up with 4x minus 5 is equal to 7. I add 5 to both sides. Cancels out on the left. 4x is equal to 12. When I divide both sides by 4, I get that x is equal to 3. D. Number 2. The graph to the left shows the distance traveled d in feet by a product on a conveyor belt m minutes after the product is placed on the belt. Which of the following equations correctly relates d and m? To figure out this equation, we can choose any 2 points that are on the graph and figure out the slope between them. So let's start with this original point, 0, 0, and let's choose another point, say 2, 4. We're going to use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So 4 minus 0 divided by 2 minus 0. And that's equal to 2. Which one of these equations has a slope of 2? Not B and not C. So between A and D, the only difference is this y-intercept of 2. If I look back at my original graph, where does this line cross the y-axis? Well, it's right here at 0, so it does not have a y-intercept. A is the correct answer. Number 5. The width of a rectangular dance floor is W feet. The length of the floor is 6 feet longer than its width. Which of the following expresses the perimeter in feet of the dance floor in terms of W? So this is my dance floor. It's not particularly exciting. Here's my width, which I will call W, and notice the length is W plus 6. By definition of a rectangle, the opposite sides are going to be equal. Does anyone remember the formula for a perimeter? You add up all 4 sides. So I'll take my W, I'll add to that W plus 6, I'll add another W and another 6, and then I'll add one last W. Combining like terms, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 W's, and if I add together my 6's, I have 12. Number 6. Y is greater than 2x minus 1, and 2x is greater than 5. Which of the following consists of the y-coordinates of all the points that satisfy the system of inequalities above? You may have noticed that 2x shows up in both inequalities. However, in the top, it's 2x minus 1. So if we start with this 2x is greater than 5, what happens when we subtract 1 from both sides? We end up with 2x minus 1 is greater than 4. So we know that y is greater than 2x minus 1, and 2x minus 1 is greater than 4. This is the transitive property of inequalities. If y is bigger than something and that something is bigger than 4, then it must hold true that y is bigger than 4. Number 10. A group of 202 people went on an overnight camping trip, taking 60 tents with them. Some of the tents held 2 people each, and the rest held 4 people each. Assuming all the tents were filled to capacity and every person got to sleep in a tent, exactly how many of the tents were 2-person tents? So if we're talking the number of tents, we know that there are some 2-person tents, let's call those X, and there are some 4-person tents, and when you add together the number of tents, you get 60. Now if we create another equation for people, we know that 2 go into each 2-person tent, and 4 go into each 4-person tent, and combined we have 202 people in all of the tents. The last part of this problem asks how many of the tents were two-person tents. The way I set up this system, X represents the two-person tents, while Y, those tents hold 4 people. So I want to figure out what X is equal to. The fastest way to do this is to solve the top equation for Y. That way I can replace the Y in the second equation with an X, and I will have canceled out the Y's. So if we take X plus Y is equal to 60, and we subtract X from both sides, that part cancels out, and I'm left with Y is equal to 60 minus X. I can take Y in the second equation and replace it with what it's equal to. This gives me 2x plus 4 times the quantity 60 minus x is equal to 202. If I distribute, I have 2x plus 240 minus 4x is equal to 202. If I combine like terms, my 2x minus 4x is going to give me a negative 2x. Then I can subtract 240 from both sides. Cancels out on the left. Negative 2x is equal to a negative 38. I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 2. And there's my answer, 19. Number 13. Oil and gas production in a certain area dropped from 4 million barrels in 2000 to 1.9 million barrels in 2013. Assuming that the oil and gas production decreased at a constant rate, which of the following linear functions f best models the production in millions of barrels t years after the year 2000? The words constant rate tell us that this is a linear model. If I consider the year 2000 and the number of barrels 4 million as a coordinate, and then I compare that to the year 2013 with 1.9 million barrels, I can use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Plugging in these numbers gives me 1.9 minus 4 divided by 2013 minus 2000. This gives me 2.1 divided by 13. Notice A and C have something that looks very similar. To cancel out this decimal, they multiply the top and the bottom by 10, which moves the decimal place over and adds a 0. So this becomes 21 over 130. And because we are taking 1.9 minus 4, which is a larger number, you can't forget about this negative. C is our best answer. Number 18. Negative x plus y is equal to negative 3.5. X plus 3y is equal to 9.5. If xy satisfies the system of equations above, what is the value of y? I see a couple of different coefficients that are equal to 1, which tells me using substitution is not going to be that challenging. However, if you'll notice, the x terms have the same coefficients. If I was to add these straight down, my x terms would go away. Let's see what else happens. Negative x plus x is 0. Y plus 3y is a 4y. Negative 3.5 plus 9.5 is equal to 6. When I divide both sides by 4, I get y is equal to, and if I divide these by a common factor, such as 2, I get the lowest form, which is 3 halves. Number 19. A startup company opened with 8 employees. The company's growth plan assumes that 2 new employees will be hired each quarter, or every 3 months, for the first 5 years. If an equation is written in the form y is equal to ax plus b to represent the number of employees y employed by the company x quarters after the company opened, what is the value of b? The good news with all this quarters business is that it's a distractor. Sure, it's 2 new employees every 3 months for the first 5 years. However, for a word problem, whenever you're using linear equations in a word problem, b always represents the starting value. How many employees did they begin with? Just 8, and you're done.